Today, we're diving into a really cool project that sits at this amazing crossroads of ancient scripture and super modern technology. It's called the AI Gospel, and what it shows us about how human minds and artificial intelligence can work together, well, it's pretty fascinating.
So that's a pretty provocative title, right? And it immediately brings up this huge question. Did an AI actually rewrite the Bible? I mean, that's a headline designed to make you click, for sure. But the truth of how this all went down is way more methodical and, honestly, even more interesting. All right, to get what this project really did, we first have to understand the problem it was trying to solve. And it's a big one, a challenge that's been around for almost 2,000 years, the very structure of the New Testament Gospels.
So, at their heart, the four main Gospels are all telling the same basic story, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. They're the foundation of the New Testament, sharing all the major events, the key teachings. It's one central narrative.
But, and this is a big but, here's where it gets complicated. They don't tell that story in exactly the same way, not at all. You've got different timelines, stories that only show up in one of the accounts, and even small but important differences in the details of events they all cover.
So the big puzzle is, how do you take these four separate sources, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and somehow weave them together into one single, flowing story? This whole idea is called harmonization, and believe me, it is not new. Scholars have been trying to do this for centuries. What's brand new here is the tool they use to pull it off. So, how'd they do it? Now, this is the most important part to understand. The AI wasn't just, let loose on the text to get creative. No way. Instead, it was given a very specific blueprint, a set of rules designed by humans on exactly how to merge these four texts into one.
And these rules really boil down to four main steps. First, figure out how to handle the stories that all the Gospels agree on. Second, what do you do when they directly contradict each other? Third, how do you fit in all the stuff that's totally unique to just one Gospel? And finally, how do you place stories that are really similar but might actually be different events?
Okay, let's break down that first rule, agreements. For the really big events that are in multiple Gospels, like the Passion story, the plan was to take the most complete version as the main framework. Then, you layer in all the unique details from the other accounts. That way, nothing gets lost, it all just gets combined. Right, but what happens when the Gospels just plain disagree? For those discrepancies, especially with the timeline of events, they had a clear rule. Go with the version that has the majority on its side, so usually Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and pick the one that makes the story flow the best. And here is a perfect example of that rule in action. In John's Gospel, the cleansing of the temple happens right at the start of Jesus' ministry. But in the other three, it's at the very end. So following the rule, the AI chose the timeline from the majority, the Synoptic Gospels, because it just creates this powerful narrative build-up right before the crucifixion. Okay, but what about all those really famous stories that only show up in one Gospel? The rule here was actually super simple. All that unique material gets included, in full. So Matthew's Sermon on the Mount or Luke's incredible story of the prodigal son, they get woven right into the main story, exactly as they were written. And that last principle covers what they call parallel accounts. These are stories that sound super similar but might not be the exact same event. Like, there are two different stories about Peter having this miraculous catch of fish. The rule was just to place each of these stories where it fit best in the overall narrative. So, with this really clear, human-made blueprint all set, the AI had its marching orders. The job now was just to follow those rules and weave these four different threads into one single, comprehensive story. The foreword to the book they created puts it perfectly. It says, "The four Gospels are seamlessly woven together." See, the goal was to make something that felt totally smooth and coherent, not like some clunky cut-and-paste job. And this is basically what that final story structure looks like. It flows in one single timeline, starting with John's really philosophical opening, then moving into Luke's detailed stories about Jesus' childhood, and then carrying on through the ministry, the passion, and all the way to the Ascension. But it wasn't just about lining up plot points. This is key. The final text keeps a style that is totally faithful to the original scriptures. And that really drives home the AI's role here. It was a tool for precision assembly, not for some kind of artistic reimagining. So this all leads us to the final and maybe the most important question this whole project brings up. It's a question about what authorship and creativity even mean in the world we live in today. So let's be absolutely crystal clear. The AI did not author a new gospel. It had zero divine inspiration, no sudden creative insight. It was just a really powerful tool that meticulously carried out a complex, logical task that was designed from start to finish entirely by humans. The real intelligence was in the blueprint, not the machine.
And that leaves us with this one last huge thought for our time. When a machine can create text, or art, or music, but it's all based on a human's design, who exactly is the real author?